Hello, let's get through all the books and movies that I read and watched this month of January 2026. So I have all my books. I actually have all the physical copies here because they were all books that I owned. Because this month I borrowed films from the library. So I don't have like the DVDs to show off for movies, but I have the books to hold and stuff. So yeah, I also have, I guess I've also read a couple of the Naruto volumes. I won't go over those because I have entire dedicated videos to that. So yeah, if you want to see me rant about Naruto, that's a thing. But I'm gonna just give a brief overview of like what I felt about things that I've like read and watched this month. So the first thing I read was the Sunbearer Trials because I had started this at the end of last year. I really liked this. It's basically more gay Percy Jackson, but like with Aztec, like Mexican mythology instead of Greek. I mean, I guess Percy Jackson as a franchise goes beyond that, but yeah, I really liked it. It's also got like a trans man as the main character, which is really cool. I haven't had a lot of stories that do that like get that, and I also really liked um I guess like a mild kind of, not really like a plot spoiler because it's not super relevant to the overarching plot, but I really liked the way that they did the sort of representation and stuff. So like the character has had top surgery and stuff, so you get that sort of like, I guess, like wish fulfillment of being like, yippee, um no boobs. But also like the way that, so they still kind of bind because the character has wings, but at this point in the story, they have wings of like, because you know how birds often look different between like the gender and stuff. So they have like wings that make them dysphoric. So they wear like a sort of a chest binder, not for the chest because that's already being dealt with, but like for the wings and stuff. And then like as they get to accept themselves, you know, their wings change color and like they have wings. And also there were some funny lines. That's what these little stick notes are. So like there was one about like not to be straight and stuff. Like it just, yeah, those things I was like, oh, this was written by a queer person. And I have been waiting for the sequel because like it finished on a cliffhanger. And like this was the first book I read of the year, but it's like taken forever for the book to come in. It still hasn't come in yet, but I'm really hoping that it does. And I can read the sequel to this. And then there's another book called Cemetery Boys by this author. Like I'm planning that this is going to be an author that I'm going to seek out basically all their stuff because it just feels like it's up my alley. But yeah, no, it's like no hetero, but damn Tio, your wings. And then it's like, does this make me a furry? I think it would make. I'm pretty sure furries have a different term for like winged creatures and like I think it's scalies is for like lizards and stuff with scales, and maybe it's feathery for birds. I don't know. Furries and stuff. Let me know. Um. Oh, and then there was also another line. I think that is this Oh yeah, there's someone was talking about like where's your binder, and like they go for the chest, but they're talking about like a binder full of like playing cards kind of things. Kind of picture like what Nico has in Percy Jackson, if I'm remembering correctly. He's got all those like little hero cards. So yeah, that specifically was funny to me because I remember one of the first times I wore a binder in public, there were these people that walked past talking about a binder, and I remember freaking out that somehow they knew, but they were talking about like a binder, like, you know, for like a book binder thing like this for school. But yeah, I just that stuck out to me because I'm like, oh, I've had this experience of the mix up. um and then yeah, there's also a funny moment about, oh, this quote was to do with the fact that like the main character, because they, you know, they have wings, they're part bird, they don't eat like chicken and stuff. And then there was another thing about like, there was a really funny scene um about the character having hollow bones. um yeah, I just feel like that was pretty good. And yeah, I'm excited for like more of it. I also didn't see the plot twist coming, but that was because I spent half the because like it was, yeah, the plot twist I didn't see coming, but part of that was me like second guessing myself. I'm also just really bad at noticing plot twists, but I can recommend this book if you like Percy Jackson specifically, like, and if you're gay and you like Percy Jackson, and especially if you want something slightly older, like I feel like this is for like a, because like Percy Jackson's like lower YA. I feel like this was a bit older, so yeah, that's who I can recommend that one from. Then the next two I'm gonna count together because they're part of the same series. So I had started reading Ranger's Apprentice end of last year. Ranger's Apprentice is one of my book series from my childhood. I think I started reading it in like year 6. So that would have been 2016. I have been reading this series for a decade, like on repeat. So there's okay, so there's technically 11 books in the main series. When I first started reading, there was 12, but book 12 of the main Ranger's Apprentice series got dubbed as book 1 of the sequel series, The Royal Ranger. I have the edition of it that's the book 12 version rather than the book 1. And then like Brother Band's also really cool. But yeah, this is a series that I really like. If you like medieval fantasy style stuff, like not that it's really particularly fantastical, like it's, I would say it's not like historically accurate, but it's like sort of grounded. Like it's things that are plausible enough, if not particularly common. For example, like there's a castle that's, you know, triangular shape because technically that is more efficient, even though that's not necessarily the most like typical. There were technically castles like that. And then there was also like, especially in Brother Band, you've got like they don't have a square sail, despite that being more typical for Vikings. And yeah, there are things like, especially like the way that women are treated tends to be better than, you know, they were historically treated at the time. So it tends to be like, I guess like a like things that were plausible at the time, if not particularly how people acted. But I really like, this series is really good with like the dynamics between characters, like this sort of dry humor that everyone has. Holt and Will are really cool. Yeah, and I also really like the way that sort of like Horace is established as kind of this like bully figure at the start, but like how they're able to sort of like I guess redeem him out of that. And also like I feel like this is a good sort of like coming of age story that then progresses beyond that. Like these characters, you know, start off at like 15 and stuff, like just sort of starting to get jobs, still like very much kids, and like they do get older and things, and then you get like second generations and stuff. Like yeah, I feel like it's a series that's pretty good at having characters across different ages. I don't know, I just like Ranger's Apprentice. I mean, I keep reading it, so it's done something right. And then these next 4 are books that I have for my upcoming uni course. So that's especially why I made sure to have like physical copies of these. So I tend to buy physical copies of books that I can't find at the library and stuff. And also I like to have books. I like my collection, but I mean I can't afford to buy everything. So libraries are still cool, and also like volunteering at the op shop means that I can find some stuff cheap. Cause like books are getting expensive. Especially with the amount of books that I want. And honestly, at the rate I'm reading, I am slightly reading quicker than I'm buying books. So that's good. I remember for a while there, like when I at my height of like when I was reading a lot, I was reading significantly faster than I could buy books, and like I had no books on my shelf that I hadn't read at least once. But yeah, the first one was Wilder Girls. This is probably the one that like of all the books I've read this month, I think this is the one that I've resonated the least with. Which I don't know what like happened, because I feel like it's not really its fault. I don't know, maybe when I dive deeper into it for the course, like, and actually properly start analyzing it, maybe I'll like it more. Because, you know, like, it has some, like, cool ideas and stuff. Like, I don't know, I don't really have a lot to say about it, because it just didn't really go in. The cover art's cool. Yeah, like, it's sort of like an apocalyptic. I think it was maybe written around like COVID. Wait, when was it released? Just especially like with it sort of like 2020. Oh yeah. Okay. That checks out. Okay, so it initially sort of was in 2019, but yeah, like sort of because it has this sort of like plague thingy. Lots of girls, lots of lesbians. So yeah, I don't know why I didn't specifically like it. And then we had Catching Teller Crow, which I like a heap of these. I feel like that I didn't quite get everything on my first read, which I mean, I'll probably go to appreciate these texts more as I delve into them for my course. This one was really cool because it had like sort of some parts were like poetry, some parts were prose, and also like it is Indigenous fiction, like so Australian Aboriginals. I'm from Australia. I should probably mention that because I guess Indigenous here, you usually know what we're referring to, but yeah. But like I don't think I've read a lot of fiction like that. Like this, I know I've like read some Dreamtime stories and stuff. Like I remember that being a thing when I was like younger, like at school. But like I mean, like most people, a lot of my books tend to be the pretty mainstream stuff. Um, so yeah, it is nice when I read, I guess, like something a bit outside of that, and also Bird. But I was also like shocked as to like I thought based on the title that it would be about catching this person called Teller Crow, but these are three different last names. And when I realized that, I was like, oh, that's kind of neat. Like, because it just subverted, like, what I had assumed based on the title. Um, yeah, I feel like I just, like the way that it was experimental by having, like, and also, like, the sort of magic realism. Like, yeah, I just did things differently. And I feel like I wasn't fully able to appreciate it, and I want to be able to. The next one I read was Feed, which I had technically read a couple of pages at school years ago, but I it had swear words in it, and I was at a school that was very much against that. So me being the goody two shoes, didn't even finish the book. I just went and reported it and said, "Hey, you guys have a book in your library that breaks your own rules." All my friends were like, "Why didn't you finish the book first?" But yeah, I was a goody two shoes. But this one was honestly probably hits harder than it did when it was released, because essentially these people have this feed like that just injects like stuff into their brains. Like this was written in like the early 2000s. And I feel like that with like AI and algorithms, yeah, like so this edition was 2012, but I think it initially was 2002. So yeah, like I feel like this with the rise of AI with algorithms and stuff, I was like, oh, this feels different than it probably did. And especially I like the way that it was so quick and easy to read because the language wasn't particularly robust because these people aren't smart, if that makes okay, that feels me that's a very that's funnily enough not a very smart way to say it. Like because these characters are so reliant, like they don't have a particularly extensive vocabulary, they have limited ideas. Like they for example, there was one scene that really stood out to me, like as it's sort of like dystopian, is like the character's going on about like how he's so glad that what the stuff that they learn at school is useful because they learn how like what stuff to buy, like things like that, instead of learning stupid things like history and dates and who did this and like the idea of like oh like yeah, that scene really stood out to me because it's like yeah, this I feel like this book has probably gotten more relevant like 2 decades later than it was when it first came out, um which is probably kind of scary for the author. They're probably like, what? And then I read The Hate You Give, which that's the last thing that I finished for this month. Like, because I've got a book that I'm like halfway through, but I'm not gonna get it finished in like the next hour. This book had some stuff that was slightly uncomfortable as a white person, and realizing how like reflective it is of like family members I've had. Because look, I'm gonna be frank, I have family members that are kind of racist, but like in the way that they don't like they have such a simplistic understanding of racism that if you try and correct them and explain to them that they're being racist, they don't acknowledge it because they see it simply as racists are bad people. I am not a bad person. I can't be racist. I'm not going around hate criming, like kind of thing. So yeah, I feel like it was very good at representing like I guess that white less overt racism, like because there's the aspects of like the main character that I felt like I was probably not quite getting, given that I'm not American, I'm not African American, so there was aspects of the vernacular that I don't think I was quite on like understanding. I'm willing to admit that yeah, there's a bit of a cultural difference that I was like, I feel like that there's context here that I'm possibly missing that I need to investigate further to better appreciate the text. But yeah, like it was at times difficult to read. And also whilst I was reading this, um, so like I had family members basically, and like one of them, has like a small child and had like their friend, and both very white, and like we were at like a club, or a pub or something, having dinner, and there was police officers, and they wanted to go say hello to the police officers, and I was like, especially whilst I was reading this book, like, I was like, oh, that is a very white thing to do. Like, yeah, the fact that, and like, I have a friend who's indigenous and has expressed active discomfort when there's police officers around, so just, like, yeah, seeing that difference in action, like, both in terms of my friend and also like through reading this, then just being aware of like the Black Lives Matter movement, because I remember, like, I was, I guess, alive when that, I mean, yeah, like, I remember people talking about that at school and stuff. Yeah, this was probably my favorite of the four that I had to read for uni. It would probably go The Hate You Give, then it actually goes in the like opposite order of I read them. So I don't know if that was a factor of if the order I read them impacted, like, I guess the one I read last is the one I like at most, so I don't know yet if that's a bias. But yeah, those are the books that I read this month. I also I'm halfway through Vampirates, so that'll be book one that I finish of for next month, and then I've also borrowed my next couple of books, so I have a vague idea of what February is going to start with. So it'll be finishing Vampires, and then I'm going to be reading Ballad of the Songbird and Snakes, because this, spoiler alert, I watched this movie, and I was like, oh, I kind of like this, because I actually watched the Hunger Games films before I read the books, because that was how my friends got me into it, because, like, I was vaguely aware of the concept, like, I was, it was a very big deal, but I wasn't particularly into it, because I had mostly heard about it through, like, Minecraft, I guess, and, like, just knew it as this, like, deathmatch thing, and I didn't understand how the Hunger Games is so much more than the games themselves. And honestly, I feel like that the Hunger Games hits so much harder now that I'm not, like, around Katniss's age, because I read it for the first time when I was, like, 16, 17, and I feel like that when you're that age, it's like, yeah, she's sort of like this hero figure, but reading it when you're just even I'm only a couple of years older, and being like, these are children, oh my gosh, like, especially the way that the district treats that, like, I think her name's Glimmer, the one from 1, they tone it down in the films, but, like, her dress, like, for most of the sort of, like, press to her stuff is, like, basically see-through, and yeah, the way they treat it is gross, but it finally came in, because, I was broke, but, like, I watched the movie and I was like, oh, I actually want to go read this, and yeah, I had to wait for it to come in at the library, because it was borrowed out, but I borrowed that, and then I've also borrowed The Sunrise on the Reaping. So if I really like this, because there's a nice edition, because this has just come out, that's, like, a hardcover with these sprayed edges that's really beautiful, but it's like $40 compared to $20 for, like, the normal version. So I guess depending on how much I enjoy this book will depend on if I want to buy it, because it's pretty. But yeah, it is kind of difficult for me to justify it just because it's pretty, but I guess now that I can read it for free first, I can decide if it's worth it. Because I do want to buy them, because I do have the other two, like, so I bought the first Hunger Games from the op shop for, like, $2 a couple of years ago, and then I, like, read the other two at the library, and then, like, when I went to read them again the most recent time, I did buy them. So yeah, I will eventually have them as part of my collection so I can read them at any time, because I'm kind of impatient and impulsive sometimes. And then I borrowed this. So this is a graphic novel version of Lord of the Flies, because I did Lord of the Flies at school. And I think this was around when I had just sort of started to get into anime, and I remember the entire time that I read Lord of the Flies, I was picturing it as an anime, and I feel like a graphic novel version is gonna hit a similar itch. Like, I remember being like, I want a Lord of the Flies anime. So when I saw that there in my library, I was like, oh, that's cool. So yeah, those are, I guess, the things that I know that I'll be reading. And then I've also got, like, some academic stuff. Because, oh yeah, the only book that I can't show off is I read a book called Reading the Vegetarian Vampire, which was really interesting. I have, like, pages of notes in my, here. So yeah, it was basically, like, talking about the way that, like, the, in the 21st century, we sort of get the rise of this archetype of a vegetarian vampire. So, vegetarian less so in the sense of, like, how we usually think of it, and more like vampires that actively avoid hurting humans, kind of thing. Like, but vegetarian in the sense that, like, they're not, like, going out of their way to hunt humans. So, like, it was talking about things like, the text that it went over like Twilight. It went over Interview with a Vampire, which is considered the proto-vegetarian. So like it's not quite a vegetarian vampire, but it's like sort of the setting the foundations. There was Buffy the Vampire Slayer was also another text. The Vampire Diaries and Southern Vampire Mysteries / True Blood. And yeah, I want to now go and also like read some of these books and series, like since I've just read a study on them, because like I like vampires, but I haven't really engaged with a lot of vampire things. Like I haven't read Twilight, mostly because like I don't know, I'm not really a romance person, but I feel like the more that I want to get into, I feel like it's an essential text if I'm gonna really dive into vampires. Like it's a big deal in, I guess, modern, like contemporary vampire texts. So yeah, that was really interesting. And yeah, then you've got the idea of like a vegan vampire, like so like synthetic blood. Honestly, I'm curious because like the character Draculaura from Monster High would count as a vegan vampire because oh no, she would count as a vegan vampire because she's like vegetarian by standard measures. Like she doesn't even consume meat. She doesn't drink any blood. Like she doesn't even need a synthetic blood. It's never explained how this happens, but honestly, Monster High's usage of monsters lore is quite unique. Like I remember, when the Monster High movie came out, like the live action one, and everyone's with like G3, and everyone's like, oh, how can like Claudine be like half human? Werewolves are already half human. It's like clearly you guys don't understand how werewolves work in this universe. They're more like furries and stuff. Like to me, it made complete sense how she could be half human, because I just understood how this series treats like were monsters, like where there's were mice, there's were, I was gonna say rabbits. That's Wallace and is there a were rabbit? I know there's were cats because like Toralei exists, but yeah. And now moving on to movies. I don't have the things to show off for these, so like these were some of these were borrowed from like the library. That's what I spent my library stuff. Well, it's not spending. And I'm also trying not to over-borrow, just because I have a habit of getting really enthusiastic and excited at the library and borrowing way too many books and not reading any of them. So I'm trying to, borrow less in smaller batches and actually read and watch the stuff that I borrow. So the first movie I watched this year was What We Do in the Shadows. It was great. I'm so glad I've watched this movie. I'm like, this is a movie that I feel like I should have seen years ago. This is so good. It was also, I don't think I've seen a lot of movies from New Zealand. And I was kind of glad it was in New Zealand, but it's sort of like a mockumentary about like these vampires and just going over their sort of average life. It was really good. If you like vampires, if you like comedies, honestly, just go watch it. Like if I don't care what you're into, just go watch the movie. The next one I watched was Happy Gilmore 2. This was just like someone put it on in the household. It was a pretty standard Adam Sandler film. Like I have seen the first Happy Gilmore, but I don't particularly have a lot of nostalgia for it. So I wasn't really the audience in that regard. Like I'm vaguely aware that it's a film about a dude that goes and plays golf, but it was probably not for me specifically. I mean, yeah, it was a pretty standard Adam Sandler film. It was a bit more depressing, like at the start than I expected. But it also had Haley Joel Osment, so we had Sora. Sora was in it. So if you don't know, like that. Yeah, Sora's voice actor was one of the characters, which was cool. And then I watched The Hunger Games: The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, which was really good. I enjoyed it. It made me go, oh yeah, okay, I need to go borrow this book and read it, because I mean, in general, books tend to be better, and I like imagine that the book's able to go in so much more depth. And yeah, I also realized that for some reason I thought his name was Cornelius Snow, not Coriolanus. I'm still not confident I pronounced that right. And I'm like, I've read the Hunger Games books twice, and I've watched the movies several times. How did I not realize what his name was? I watched Strictly Ballroom, so this is the first film that was like a rewatch. So it had been a while since I had seen it, but it was a movie that I've enjoyed before, but I forgot how Australian it is. Honestly, it's such a campy film. It's really good. And a lot gayer than I remember it being as a kid. Like, the way that they reacted to the fact that he wasn't doing ballroom properly. And also, this time I realized something. So there's always been something about this movie, which, okay, I should probably briefly explain its premise. Basically, it's about this guy and he's been working for his entire life in ballroom. You know, that's his life, that's his whole thing, and he started to want to do his own steps instead of strictly ballroom. Do you get it? Like, you know, he's wanting to improvise, not just follow the rules and stuff, and he's got this sort of like partner because he had like a dance partner, but she's kind of ditched him because, you know, she wants to win, so she doesn't want to do these other weird steps. But she's got a sort of he's got a new partner that's like, I guess, like the love interest and stuff as well, and like she's fully on board with these new steps, but like she's also treated like a beginner. And I remember finding it very confusing and being like, how is she able to like do this? Like, I was willing to suspend disbelief a little bit because, like, you know, that's part of how movies work, but I was also like, this feels a little bit unrealistic. But I realized this time around that, like, so she's actually like, I think she's Spanish. I don't quite remember like where stuff, but like she's actually familiar with the Latin dances and stuff. Like, they're part of her actual culture. So I was like, oh, she's maybe not technically strictly a beginner as like much as I thought she was. Like, maybe she didn't actually just purely start when she started taking lessons at the studio. So like I was like, oh, okay, that kind of makes a bit more sense how she's able to be, you know, competent enough to compete. So it's, yeah, I thought that was an interesting detail that I recognized this time. And then I watched K-pop Demon Hunters sing-along version. I had a sleepover with friends, and we sang K-pop Demon Hunters at the top of our lungs because, like, I mean, I love K-pop Demon Hunters. It's kind of funny, as someone that actually knew about it before it came out, I remember I saw a trailer for it, and all the comments were like, this looks so dumb. This is so stupid. And I remember, like, going into it, like, I was like, I'm probably going to enjoy this, but it's probably going to be in, like, in a similar way to how I like Descendants, where I'm like, yeah, this is a deeply flawed, kind of cringy piece of media, but I still like it. And then, like, I watched it, I'm like, oh, this is legitimately good. like, I didn't expect it to be the big thing that it is. I mean, no one did. I feel like Sony's kind of kicking themselves for that. And then the next thing I watched was Bratz Girls Really Rock. So, my friend had the video game on PS2, and I recently had just bought it, like, on the Wii. But the start of the game is basically, okay, this is the premise. They're like, woo, school's over, it's summer vacation, we're gonna go to this cool camp. Oh no, we missed the bus. And then this random girl, forgot her name, is like, hey, did you guys also miss the bus? And they're like, yeah, now we can't go to Camp Starshine. And it's like, well, who wants to catch the bus anyway? And then they skydive into camp. And I was like, what? So I was curious to watch the movie because I have seen, like, Bratz Rock Angels, and I know the Bratz movies can kind of get insane. But I was curious if the film provided a little bit more context. But in the film, they just catch the bus. So they made this up purely just to have a, like, skydiving minigame. Yeah, Bratz movies are kind of a fever dream, especially because, like, the graphics in the game kind of look like they're already video game cutscenes. Like, the animation is kind of dated, and, like, you could tell it was made on a nothing budget. But it kind of adds to it, like, I don't know, it was definitely an experience watching that. Cause, like, I was kind of a Bratz kid, but also not really. Like, I didn't have any of the Bratz dolls because my mom thought they were ugly. So I never had them as a kid. And I feel like that, you know, as I got a bit older, I moved into, like, Monster High and Ever After High. Like, when I was younger, I remember, like, around kindergarten, I did borrow some of the, Bratz movies from, like, Video Easy. But I was more of a Barbie person, which checks out. I was not the edgy, cool kid. I was definitely more of a Barbie. That makes, I hope that makes sense. And yeah, and then I watched Pan's Labyrinth, which is a film that I watched for English class, and was just curious to rewatch because it had been a while. I forgot how, like, gruesome it gets at times. Like, yeah, I just forgot, like, how dark it gets, especially, like, in the real world stuff, because I feel like that we kind of remember a lot more of the, like, fantastical elements. But yeah, I was, I also watched it in like two lots because I was watching it on my computer, like that I have an old computer that I basically is now just a glorified DVD player because it actually has a DVD player in it. So that tells you how old this laptop is. Um, but yeah, I accidentally bumped it like halfway through the film and was too lazy to find my spot again, so I watched it in two lots. And then so that was also a rewatch. And then the next thing I watched was it was a documentary called Do I Sound Gay? Oh, this was the first time I'd seen it. So it was basically about a guy going, like, it was discussing sort of, like, I guess the gay guy accent, like, and it was this dude who was going on this journey, where he was basically going to, like, a speech therapist because he didn't like the way that his voice sounded. He didn't like how gay he sounded, but he also, like, understood there was sort of, like, code switching and stuff. It was also kind of difficult at times to watch because, like, it came out in 2014, which isn't not really that long ago. Like, that's 12 years ago, and just, like, some of the things, they're talking about, like, yeah, I guess just realizing, like, how far we've come at times, and, like, just, yeah, like, I feel like it can be easy to forget sort of how far we've come with rights and stuff, especially, like, when things are sort of under threat and stuff. Yeah, it was just, I guess because it's, like, especially being a documentary and stuff, like, it was just a very honest and raw film, which I feel like, yeah, can make it. I don't know if I had mentally prepared myself for the fact that, hey, homophobia might be mentioned here. And then the next thing I watched was Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which was the first time watching. It was alright. It was very much a, like, 2010s, like, dark, gritty fantasy film. Like, it kind of reminded me of. There's a lot of those kind of films that I feel like came out and, like, no one cared. Like, oh, what's it called? Like, there was Jack and the Giant Slayer, like, I don't know, I can just picture these kind of films being in our, like, cases of totally legit, definitely not pirated DVDs. Like, Sorcerer's Apprentice, I don't know what this, like, the term for these films are, but, like, I feel like even the Aragon movie falls into this. Like, they're fantasy films that feel like they should have been big things that just really weren't. Um, and also, like, I don't particularly like Pride and Prejudice. I have tried to read it. I have also tried to read Emma, because I've had so many English teachers be like, Jane Austen's great. And I'm like, I just don't get it. Like, I don't know, maybe it's just a skill issue. Maybe I need to, like, because I know that, like, The Great Gatsby, I also had a similar reaction where it took me several reads before I was like, oh, I get this text now. But, like, yeah, I don't know, Jane Austen just hasn't hit that. And the fact that I also just wasn't super engage when there was literal zombies involved, I'm like, I don't think Pride and Prejudice is for me. Luckily I don't think that I have to do it for any of my English courses that's coming up. I don't know, but I mean, it would be nice if I could appreciate Pride and Prejudice better than I can. And then the next thing I watched was Life Size, which is basically like the Barbie movie, but like not by Barbie and in 2000. So it had like Lindsay Lohan and I forgot what the actress that played the Barbie equivalent, so her name was Eve. Because she was, like, I think she's a famous person, but, like, it wasn't a name I had heard of. Honestly, she played it so well. And, like, because I have very mixed feelings about the Barbie movie. Like, I wanted to like it because it looks so cool. Like, I want films to look like that. It kind of reminded me of But I'm a Cheerleader, and I love movies that really don't try to be realistic. Like, they go campy, they go weird, they, like, colorful. I like films that recognize that they're sort of not, they don't have to be a reflection of reality. They can do cool, weird stuff. But I didn't particularly like the film itself. Like, I've only seen it once. But, I was excited about it because I'm a doll collector. Like, I might not specifically collect Barbie, but I still find Barbie interesting as a concept. I actually have thoughts about, like, the autistic Barbie that recently came out, that I'm not sure if I'll make a video about, but because, like, I don't know if I have enough thoughts that I can articulate well enough to warrant that, but maybe. But yeah, I just found that the film itself just wasn't as good as I was hoping it would be. Like, I feel like the whole concept, I don't know, like, it felt like Enchanted did the concept of, like, leaving this fantastical world and the real world better. Like, yeah, I don't know, maybe it tried to do too much. I felt like the feminist side of things wasn't as groundbreaking as the films thought it was. I mean, I like the song I'm Just Ken, but also, like, the fact that, like, the highlight of the film was Ken is also kind of sad. I mean, Margot Robbie did a great job. Like, I don't... And, like, the costumes are cool, and, like, I feel like there was individual pieces, but they just didn't come together as the most satisfying whole. But Life Size, like, I feel like works better because it didn't take itself too seriously, and it really lent into the actual concept of the doll coming to life more so than the Barbie movie did. I feel like because the Barbie movie wanted to be smarter, it kind of neglected the actual concept of, like, a doll coming to life. It did have some of that, like, classic tropes of, like, oh, my mom's dead, but, like, it kind of was essential that the main character, because if you've seen any sort of, like, teenage movie thing, like, they'll just have, like, a dead mom, and they'll be like, it'll be like, oh, you know, you're so much like your mother, like Wild Child does this, or what, The Kissing Booth does this, and they'll have varying degrees of, like, how relevant this even is, but, like, it actually is very plot relevant to Life Size. Like, the plot would not happen if the mother wasn't dead. Because, like, basically the premise is, like, Lindsay Lohan, I forgot the character's name, so I'm just gonna call her that, is basically, like, has withdrawn from social life, is, you know, mourning the mom's death, and she just basically uses, like, magic to try and bring her mother back, but, like, her father's, like, girlfriend, I don't know if they're, like, the stepmother, but, like, basically brushes the doll's hair, and, like, it gets, like, basically, like, shenanigans, brings the dolls to life by accident, but it's also, like, I don't know, it was really weird at times, like, how it felt odd as to, like, what Eve, like, the Barbie equivalent, was aware of and what she wasn't. Like, she was oddly, like, flirty with the dad, as if, like, she's actively aware of the fact that she needs to figure out a way to, you know, survive in this new environment. Like, yeah, it felt like it was definitely an interesting movie. But, like, the copy I borrowed from the library was, like, scratched, which was kind of sad. And then the last thing I watched this month was Juno, which is, I watched that for uni, so, like, yeah, I had, like, the 4 books plus Juno was the last text. I don't know how I feel about the movie. Some of the lines were funny because of Elliot Page transitioning and, like, the context and, like, just the layer that adds to some of the lines about it and things. But also, like, I felt like it got kind of weird with the dude, like, there was like the guy, yeah, I just got, like, uncomfortable, and then he just, like, sort of ditched, like, midway through and just didn't come back, and I was like, yeah, I feel like it just definitely didn't go in the directions I thought it would, and yeah, had some interesting choices. Like, it wasn't a bad movie, but yeah, I guess I don't know how I feel about it, and yeah, those are the movies I watched and the books I read. So I guess, like, I've got some movies, like, I want to watch. Like, for example, I borrowed from the library Memoir of a Snail, because this is by the same studio that made Mary and Max. And I like the film Mary and Max, so I borrowed this. And yeah, I've got some, like, Disney ones I want to watch. Like, I want to watch Tron, because of Kingdom Hearts. I haven't seen them. Want to watch the High School Musicals, because Bet on It was, like, my second highest song for 2025, and I haven't seen High School Musical 2, so I'm like, I probably should change that. So yeah, those will probably be things that I watch in February. And yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, next, I mean, February's gonna have more Naruto. I have gotten to a point where I need to start, like, ordering them in, because, like, they don't just have, like, there's 72 volumes of Naruto. They can't have those all in my local bookshop. So I've got the next one, and then I've got volume 6, like, I bought it to read, and then I've got volume 7 coming in. So yeah, that might affect my schedule for how I release those, but that's what I've read and watched. I think favorite film I watched this month was What We Do in the Shadows, and then favorite book is kind of difficult, because, like, I love The Ranger's Apprentice, but, like, I don't particularly judge them as individual books. I kind of judge it as a collective, and they also have the advantage of, like, 10 years of nostalgia. So they kind of feel like cheating. I also am really enjoying Naruto. Reading The Vegetarian Vampire was really interesting. But, like, it feels like that I read enough variety of things that it's difficult to compare them, so I don't know what, like, there's not a clear winner for the books in the same way that there was for the movies. So yeah, that's January.